welcome back to the Inspiration Station and your Everyday Edge podcast. I'm your host, Mr. U. This is the show where stories spark action. Glad to have you with us. If you're watching us for the very first time, wherever you are and however you're watching or listening, thanks for making us part of your week. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Our guest today is a chronic illness coach, author, and the podcast host for the show To the Bone, Conversations on Pain, Illness, and Meaning. Dr. Jeffrey Bones with us. Hey, Doc.
All
how
right.
you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm already inspired by the intro music, so I'm good to go.
I love it. I'm in love with our. I'm biased. I'm in love with all of our four shows music. I think about it when it's not playing, so I'm pretty locked in.
I need some David Goggins quotes over it or something like that. So.
I love it, man. It's good to have you back on one of our shows. We interviewed you recently. We heard your story. A lot of folks have not heard it, but I want to give them a chance in the amount of time we have today to hear it again. But
sure.
Here's a question for you. Now, when you're dealing with the kind of things you talk about, chronic stress, chronic illness,
yes,
what would you say are some signs that, you know what, perhaps I'm dealing with something like this? Because a lot of folks, like you talked about in the previous interview, they get misdiagnosed. They spend a lot of time in the not knowing phase. Are there any early signs, psychological or what have you, where they can detect, you know what, I'm dealing with something that's probably a chronic stress or chronic illness? Is that possible to have those signs?
Well, I think, when it's about the pattern, because we can all have like, one bad night of sleep and, we're dragging, we feel depressed, we feel anxious. Well, it's like, okay, one time doesn't mean much, but what is the pattern? And if the pattern is really deviating from your baseline, then you need to kind of start asking yourself some questions, and then you go to the doctor. But I always say it's kind of like, if that doctor doesn't have an answer for you and they just kind of blow you off, by all means, get a second, third opinion. Go to the specialist. Go to multiple specialists. I've been to multiple specialists, and you would think that they would all say the same thing, and it's amazing. They don't say the same thing. It's like if you're in the gym, it's kind of like trainers are going to have different ideas in terms of how to build muscles and what to eat and what to do. Well, the doctors are the same way. And their story for you may get you there, may get you to a healthier way of being. But a lot of times, sometimes their story doesn't. And sometimes you have to piece their story. Okay, part of this is right, part of that's right. But it's amazing. The storytellers that we think would have all the answers, they don't. And so that's where we have to trust ourselves.
Yeah. One of the things that I try to do, I don't know how good a job I do, but I try on all of our shows and through our coaching and every other way to kind of put out there the really awesome part of humanity.
Yes.
We got so much that talks about the underbelly, and I get a lot of bad stuff going on around us. No need to sugarcoat it. It is what it is.
Sure.
But what I try to do is overemphasize the good part because it gets buried a lot. But a lot of times we're dealing with long-term struggles and long-term pains and things like that. Isolation sets in. What's a practical way, Dr. Jeffrey, that people can kind of push past the isolation that comes with that kind of long-term pain and struggle?
Well, I think the first thing is to recognize it, because if you don't recognize that it's kind of like the lobster kind of being slowly boiled. It's like it's not going to recognize that it has a problem, and eventually it's going to be consumed, and it's going to get to the point where you can really fix it. So early on, you got to catch it. That like I'm pulling back. I'm not answering those text messages. I'm telling my friends, oh, you know what? Maybe next time, next week, hit me up next time. And that's not what we want. When we're limping a little bit physically or emotionally, we need to lean into other people. We need to lean into our community, our family and friends. And sometimes the people that we may pay, whether it's a coach, a trainer, whoever it is, you got to ask for help.
One of our mentors, he's already passed on many, many years ago. But one of his greatest quotes, I'm probably going to butcher, so I'm going to give you the Mr. U version because it's shorter. Yes. Basically said that the richest place in the entire world is the graveyard. All of the poems and stories and inventions and books that haven't been written, the songs that haven't been written, that people have decided not to do or have foregone completing because of things that go on in their life. So I'm just a full believer in the awesome creativity of who we are.
Yes.
What tell people who are getting to the place where they have decided to minimize their symptoms, where they've got to the place where they tell themselves, you know what, I can handle this. I don't need help. I can keep going. And then before you know that, a really bad place where they can't be that creative, incredible person and do the things that they're purpose to do in this life. What do you tell those folks that are in that danger zone?
I would say look down at your belly button. I'd say look down at your
Okay.
belly button. And what's that going to remind you? You didn't get here by yourself. So how do you think that you're going to get out of this problem by yourself? And it's kind of like, and so it's like we came in with the assistance of someone else, aka mom, and and there's a lot of different family and friends that show up. You mentioned a mentor. We all need our mentors, and we need to be looking for that. And we need to be asking. We need to be talking. But the first thing is to recognize it's like nothing happens in humanity. Look around. I'm in a room right now. I didn't build this room. I didn't put up this, the windows or the walls or the ceilings or this or that. I didn't lay the floors. Everything around me is built by somebody. I didn't make this shirt, it's like I didn't make these pants. I bought them, but it's like I'm surrounded by things, let alone the camera, the lights, the microphone. We're surrounded by humanity and culture. And it's like, but the thing is, these are the echoes of somebody else's labor, somebody else's work. And we need to bring it into the real time, into the present, where you can actually see someone, shake their hands, give them a hug, tell your friend that you love them, whatever it is. We need more of that.
I wholeheartedly agree. I believe that your answer to this next question will probably bless people in two ways. It'll be inspirational in two ways. I'd love for you to kind of share how your story intersected with your becoming the podcast host of To the Bone, Conversations on Pain, Illness, and Meaning, because I think there's a mindset shift that have to happen. There's a steps toward rebuilding from the narrative, from the other voices, from the things that are going on in your life, that are situations that could have been where you hung out at, but you just have to move forward from that. So kind of piece together your story of moving through chronic illness and the bridge that got you to being the podcast host of To the Bone. Go ahead, man.
It's like the story of the phoenix, the most beautiful bird in the world, and then it just kind of like starts shedding feathers and it starts wilting, and that's what happened when I got sick. It was black mold in the HVAC. I developed this chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which my body went crazy.
Wow.
My feet vibrating, my bladder hurting. And if you want an ego death as a man, you get your bladder scoped. It's kind of like that's a humbling experience. It's kind of like that water's cold. And so it's like, my head, my memory it's I could remember my kids' names. Like I have pain in my head, pain in my feet, a tremor throughout my body. Everything is can't sleep, lose tons of weight, can't eat. The body is in breakdown mode, and that's me losing my feathers. And that's me, ultimately decimating myself, and not intentionally, just the illness. And there's a point where it crosses over the line where I'm not going to come back. I'm not going to go be that same phoenix. I have to ultimately destroy. I have to blow up the old, and I have to let go so the new can be found, and I can be kind of curious to whatever's going to come next. But there's that grief of that beautiful bird that I once was blowing up, but blowing up for a purpose, blowing up to the next, blowing up so I could be kind of curious, because my old ways were all destroyed when I got sick. And I had to find new outlets. And I started off with poetry and writing, journals and books and this and that, but my natural setting is ultimately to talk, to use this, mouth of mine, and to be able to share stories. Because like, what am I? I'm a storyteller. I listen to stories and I help edit stories and I share stories. But at the essence, I'm a storyteller. That's who I am. And so the transition was, and this was the big transition. I had always been helping other people edit their stories. They're at, and this was the moment when the Phoenix was destroyed. Oddly enough, the only tattoo that I have on my body, when the Phoenix was destroyed, that I incorporated the importance of my story. Now, I didn't say, well, screw everybody else. I don't care about their story. It's kind of like, no, 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 no. I get up in the day. I get up every morning to help other people. That is my purpose. That is my mission. Service to others. That is what it is. Solidarity. But now there is greater recognition of my own personal story, and I caretake that part of the garden, which had just been neglected throughout decades and decades of my life until it all fell apart.
I want to take the time that we have left just to ask you a couple more questions. And thanks for sharing that. That's powerful stuff right there. And I'm impressed that you shared your story so transparently. Just a couple more questions for you. What would you say, Dr. Bone, is one simple, it could be mental or emotional practice that somebody can start today that helps them stay grounded when they get to that place where life is like overwhelming or they got a lot of questions, with a lot of uncertainty? What can they do practice-wise?
I think the first thing it is to write things down, get it out of your head, because the last thing that you want to do is just ruminate all day long, because you have a problem. The brain's going to go looping over and over and over. And it's like being told to pee in the corner of a round room. And and I would kind of put two things at once, peanut butter and chocolate here. Let's put two good things together. I like structured worrying, which is you say, okay, for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I'm going to worry about it. The other 23 hours and 40 minutes, I'm not going to worry about it. It's kind of like that's not going to be my priority. And so it's kind of like I give myself time every single day to worry about it because it is important. But during that time, I can write about those worries. And so I'm structuring it so it just doesn't engulf all of my day, all of my life, but I'm also kind of getting it out of me and stopping the rumination by putting it down on paper. So structured worrying and expressive writing doesn't cost you a thing. And if you're going to throw one more thing on it, go take a walk, but go take a walk with no technology, no distractions. Feel
That's
your
important.
feelings, hear your thoughts, no matter how uncomfortable they are. Again, free thing. And if you can't walk, just go out and sit outside, sit in the sun, no technology, 20 minutes.
Yep, vitamin D, embrace the silence. I love it, man. That's
Yep.
that's good. That's good advice. Last question they're going to have you after that, and if also nobody can find your work, what they can expect from your show to the bone. But last question, you mentioned this in passing, but I want to kind of just have you share this really briefly. You highlight the importance of the support system that you had for your journey. I
Yes.
mean, I know it's easy to give up when you feel helpless. I'm thinking that it's even tougher for the caregivers too, or at least it's tough in its own way for the caregivers,
Yes.
and they might feel really helpless. You know what? I don't know what else I can do, and they start in a way starting to give up as well and pulling back a little bit. What's the
Yes.
importance of the support system on this kind of journey?
That's we all need the support system, but the support system has to have realistic expectations, and they have to know exactly what they're doing. I remember when I played basketball, it's kind of like, there were guys on the team that thought they were, the best, they were the practice all-stars, it's kind of, they were great in practice, but on the court, it's kind of like they didn't know their roles. It's like, man, you're just there to set picks and, your points come off the boards. We're not running plays for you. You got to know your role. If you know the expectations, it's kind of like I remember old school Bulls, Bill Cartwright got the first, 2 points, throw it down in the very beginning because Bill's knees aren't showing up in the second half. And so it's
Nope.
kind of like everyone, and again, it's like, and what do Jordan, respected Pippen because Pippen, and not Pippen, I was going to say Rodman,
Love
Rodman was, wild, but he knew exactly what Rodman knew his role. And it's like, and everyone knows their role. It's like everyone can play together as a team. So you go in as a caregiver, and it's like it's not your role to fix it. It's not your role to make it all right. It's your role to care and to show up and be present. If you do those two things, you're hitting 90% of it. 90% of it. I'm present and I care. How can I help you today?
I love it. Rodman has been known to try a 3-pointer from time to time. It didn't always
I've
go
seen
well.
those.
But
Man,
he's tried it, but he
he
does
it
those
was
well.
always shooting it flat. He couldn't put Ray Allen. He was not. So yes.
No need to compare the two because it's not any comparison whatsoever. But brother, thank you for being here and for sharing so much of your incredible story. I'd love for you, before we close out today, kind of let folks know where they can find you. I have the website up on the screen as well for those that are watching today. But also speak to your ideal listener for the To The Bone podcast. Who are you making that podcast for? Who's it speaking to? Talk to them, and I have your website up on the screen. Go ahead.
So Dr. Bone, drbone.live, DRBONE.live. That's where you can find me. And my ideal listener is me. It is someone who is lost in the forest and is trying to figure out stories, because I'm a big story person. I love biographies, autobiographies. It's like I mentioned Goggins, I mentioned these different people, and it's like it's like you can't hurt me. It's kind of like I want to hear those stories from people, and so I'm giving different stories, and I have over 50 episodes and 50 stories. And what does that mean? That there isn't one story. There's just not one answer. There's lots of different ways to run this life, lots of different plays for every moment of our life. And so I'm giving out ideas, so when it's right for you, that you can pick out the different arrows out of that quiver, because there's just not one arrow for everything.
Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Bone. Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me. I appreciate it very much.
Pleasure's all mine. If you guys are watching us for the first time, thanks for making us part of your week. You can find us on all the socials, audio, and video platforms for podcasts. We are there. We're the Inspiration Station where stories spark action. That's Dr. Bone. I'm Mr. U. Thanks again for watching and listening. Have a great day.